Dr. Hanisha here. Thank you so much for joining me on my podcast, Mahan Health with Dr. Hanisha. Mahan literally translates to great in Sanskrit, and it only makes sense to have the absolute best when it comes to your health. My goal is by you listening or watching this podcast, you're getting just a little bit closer to achieving Mahan or great health yourself. This podcast is all for you, so please make sure to comment what you'd like to learn more about so I can get a guest on the show who's an expert in that field, or I might even talk about it myself. I am seeing patients and clients all over the world virtually, so make sure to book your free 15-minute phone call today to see how you can start achieving Mahan or great health yourself. Today's episode, I had the opportunity to interview a friend and esteemed colleague, Dr. Jahaz Shine. Dr. Shine is a naturopathic medical doctor functioning as a medical director at enVoque MD for both Scottsdale and Mesa locations. Her primary role is ensuring patient care and safety, office compliance with DEA and FDA, and customer satisfaction. She is passionate about providing exceptional care and great practice. Dr. Shine's background as a primary care provider covered hormonal replacement, anti-aging, thyroid disorders, autoimmunity, disease prevention, gastrointestinal disorders, chronic pain, fibromyalgia, respiratory disease, and anxiety and depression. Her focus in the past few years has been that of an integrative approach, including intravenous therapy, nutraceutical and pharmaceutical prescribing, bioidentical hormone replacement, botanicals, homeopathics, and more. Dr. Shine served in the U.S. Air Force for nearly a decade, where she sat on the board of the Occupational Wellness team and worked in space and missile flight medicine and air evacuations. She has provided care to American military members in 8 countries. Dr. Shine has fought in Washington for veterans' rights and access to care against the opioid crisis and for Medicaid and Medicare recipients to have access to naturopathic care. Dr. Shine is coming from California and making Arizona her permanent home with her daughter, Nadia. Dr. Shine has always been the ray of hope that I need when I feel like things are falling apart. So I hope that after hearing our conversation, you feel that way too. Today's episode is definitely something that I'm very passionate about. For far too long, I've seen the systemic oppression of people of color, and predominantly in the Black, and indigenous, and Hispanic communities in this nation. And these systemic issues are the reason why not everyone has an opportunity to experience Mahan health. They barely experience even decent health, let alone Mahan or great health. And it's because of these systemic issues that are in place that oppress certain groups of people. And so I hope that with this episode, you get something out of it and learn more about what you can do to be a part of the fight for justice so that we can all achieve Mahan health together as the human race. All right, make sure to leave comments below on what you thought of this episode and reach out to Dr. Shine or myself after the show. All right, enjoy. Hello, Dr. Shine. How are you doing today?
Hi, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Of course, I'm so glad to have you here. I haven't seen you in so long, and this is so nice to see you right now.
It is. It is. Social distancing when you're an extroverted hugger is a tough one. So I am missing people in general.
Definitely. Yeah, no, I feel that. I'm definitely an extroverted hugger myself, and I'm just like, I just want to hug everyone. I've been hugging so many trees.
Literal tree hugger, yeah.
Yeah, I've become a literal tree hugger.
See you. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, and we'll get into a little bit more of like the current events, what's happening, and how that's affected both of us. But before we get into that, I do want to talk a little bit about your journey. I like to ask all of my guests this question because our journeys are so powerful, right? So tell us about your journey and how you got to naturopathic medicine.
Well, I feel like I've told this story on so many platforms, but it is always a good place to start, right? Who we are. I actually was born in Memphis, Tennessee. And of course, I'm a naturopathic doctor like yourself, excuse me. And when I was a kid, I would always spend time with my grandmother in the kitchen. Everything that we took was from the earth for the most part, because we grew it in our backyard. So all of our poultices and syrups and everything I got to make with her. So I grew up in that. That was a very easy transition for me. But I definitely always had an interest in science and medicine. And I knew innately that I was just born to be a healer. And so down the line, of course, I got into what we call back then the Health Organization Students of America. This was in high school, and I was able to go to an optional school, whereas if you knew you want to be either an engineer or in the healthcare field, that they had classes for you to take in place of home economics. So I'm telling about my age right now because I don't think they have that kind of stuff and haven't had that for a while. I took typing, and you could take cooking and stuff like that. But instead I did take typing and computers, and end up getting into geriatric nursing and stuff like that, medical terminology courses while in school. And so when I was done, of course, I went to school and eventually would go on to get my bachelor's in biological and physical science with a minor in chemistry. And I was in the Air Force. So when I started out, I used to do space and missile medicine. So all of the flight medicine, missileers and firefighters, that they were my responsibility, because Vandenberg Air Force Base, which is in Central California, launches all the missiles. And so that's kind of where I got my start. But I got bored. I got tired of being on the ground. I wanted my own flight suit. So I applied to air evacuation school and went through survival school, which was, I would never repeat that again. But
wow, yeah.
Then I end up getting, I graduated, deployed, and worked in 8 countries. Got to work with a lot of people, different nationalities and backgrounds, and worked with a pretty solid team that just got it done. It was amazing time. And so when I finished, I said, you know what, I want to go back to school, and I want to, get my, go to medical school. I was looking at becoming a DO, and Western really wanted me. And then I had Western and Bastyr on my list. So I ended up going to Bastyr, and it had to be the best decision of my life. So I got to raise my daughter around some phenomenal people of all different backgrounds, and just some of the most amazing people I've just ever known. So they still have a soft spot, in my heart. And yeah, that was kind of my abbreviated journey. So since then, I've been in primary care, family care. Family practice was definitely, I realized, not my area pretty quickly. So it was short-lived. But primary care was great. And I got to work in some underserved community clinics, which was pretty good. So now here I am in Scottsdale, and I work for enVoque MD, where we mostly specialize in bioidentical hormone replacement therapy and thyroid management. So sometimes I do take a few select cases outside of that. If it's an autoimmune issue, I have people coming to me for all sorts of things. So now I'm at the point where at least I can pick and choose those cases. But yeah, that's kind of where I am now.
Oh, well, thank you for sharing your story. I feel like your story is always so inspiring. You've done so much and been involved in so many different things, like even going to war and everything. I can't even imagine all the things you've seen and been through. So it's a lot. So I always appreciate you for all of your wisdom and knowledge that you provide for us. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's get into the topic that we really want to get into. Let's talk about let's start with the current events. Let's start with what exactly is happening right now, and tell me how you feel about it and what's
Well, considering we're looking at something that's like a cluster of events, there aren't one isolated thing that we're dealing with at a time. I think what we're seeing right now is the unrest of all people, right? We have a pandemic going on. That was a lot to deal with already for most people. Being separated from, your work and your colleagues, your friends, your family, having to, for many of us who have small children, I have a 10-year-old daughter. I think that's been the most stressful part. Not because, she's incredible. She's not the problem. This Harvard level of schooling that I've had to do from home, on top of taking care of 400 patients I'm responsible for, give or take. And then, being at home sometimes, at work sometimes, I feel like I personally have been all over the place. So I can only imagine, I stop and think about other people who don't have a safe space to be in their home or don't have a home at all. So that's a wide range with the pandemic alone.
Mm-hmm.
And the fear and anxiety that I've watched it build up in people. You know, I tend to not bring work home because when I come home, I like to settle in and cook for my daughter and spend time, you know, watering my plants. And we have a pet bearded dragon. I'm just wrapped up in being present in my own home. But having to work from home posed just a completely, you know, separate issue altogether.
Right.
And so I've had time to really sit and think about it like, hey, let me always start with gratitude. I have a home to be in and it's safe. My daughter does have a mom who's going to be here and cook, and still we have food, we have everything we need. But that's not the case across this country and definitely not global. Okay. So that's another thing. And then no matter how isolated we've been, Black men have still continued to die at the hands of police who get to walk away scot-free. This is definitely nothing new for the Black community. And that adds on a level of what they say insult to injury, or throwing salt in a wound that's already festering and never had the opportunity to heal.
Mm-hmm.
So we're seeing civil unrest right here unfolding in front of us. Um, we have just other global things that are happening, right? And they aren't happening in a vacuum. You know, you have people fighting for animal rights still. We have people fighting for better health care or health care altogether.
Yeah.
And we know that structure needs to be dismantled and rebuilt, right?
Yes.
And then we have people that are still struggling as a whole with these giant gaps in pay. You have the richest of the rich in this country and the poorest of the poor in this country. How can we level out these gaps? You know, and we have worldwide things again going on, like global warming. People are still worrying about the fight for science and the right to have true research be on the forefront, you know, logic and reason and things that we love about science, getting to prove those facts and how they apply, you know, to the just anthropology of existence of humans, you know. So I do think that with all of these things happening at once, at a time we're stuck at home for the most part, we get to now focus on all of it because we have almost nothing else to do for some of us.
Mm-hmm.
And now is the time for people to come together and display their level of seriously discuss. They're at their wits' end, people who've been stuck at home, isolated, depressed, anxious. Now couple it with these new events. Now this is what happens. This is the unfurling and the burning that's going to happen in order for restoration to occur.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just what I think we're all seeing. And everyone's tired. We're tired from different things, but the end result is we're all tired, but we're not tired enough to fight. And that's what human resilience is about: fighting for your right to exist, to thrive, to be, to have, to do, to freely think, and to be able to come home to a place of peace. And not everyone has that. So until we get to the point where there's equality across the board, honesty and transparency from our government, better treatment as a whole for everyone, we will repeat this again. And that's just the thing about life and energy. If you do not willfully submit and learn how to be better, not just for yourself, but for everyone else, because we need each other to survive and we're all in this together. If you don't get that, we'll be circling back around to it.
Right, definitely. I think one of the analogies that I was giving to someone earlier was actually how the recent events unfolding with the Black man and woman being filmed and dying in that Ahmaud wasn't due to police officers, but it was still due to racism, straight up, right? So having these people die recently and seeing these videos, I think the way I put it was like the whole COVID pandemic and all the economic crisis that unfolded because of it was really just like taking off the Band-Aid, right? So you stop taking those steroids that are constantly suppressing your symptoms. You're like, they're just like steroid suppressing. All of a sudden you stop taking it and all the pain is just like bursting out. So it's like, it's like in a way of like detox symptoms, right? Where, and so I think of it like COVID was like the detox that you were starting to take for yourself, and just being able to start. And then these recent events was just like the big push on it. It was like, because this, like you said, it's been going on forever. Like this isn't new. This isn't new at all. It's just now
it's bubbling over.
Exactly. The water, the bucket has been overflowed.
Oh yes.
People have had enough.
Oh yes.
And rightfully so. Right.
Rightfully so.
So rightfully so.
I do I do feel the need to add in here though, you know, people always ask, how am I doing? And I do appreciate that. But I just look at, I guess I can say where I always start is by having gratitude. I feel like that, you know, gratitude and hope are two things that can always counter other feelings. They outweigh other things, gratitude and love, you know. And I do realize that this is a very painful time, but it's also because 2020, I've heard a lot of people say horrible things about this year, and oh, can't we skip past it? And there's a lot of memes and a lot of jokes about 2020. And I'm not going to laugh. I lie at them, you know, laugh at them. Some of them are hysterical. But when I take a very zoomed out view of what 2020 has proposed, it's total and complete chaos. But the thing about chaos is going to result in one or two things: complete destruction or birth and evolution. And so what I think we're seeing now is this piece of the very destructive cataclysmic forces that are at hand, because everyone's everywhere. You know what chaos looks like? It's like molecules randomly interacting in glass, right? And each molecule that bumps is going to set you off on a trajectory. It could slow some things down, speed some things up, cause things to go in different directions. But those of us who choose to be focused on the outcome, I'm an outcome person. I want to look forward and inject my vision into the center of the eye of this storm and say, okay, when we come out of this, what will be the result? What I've seen already start to unfold is the birth of something new and evolved in the chaos, right?
And
some people will be left behind, the people who choose not to change. But for many of us who want to see change and don't want to see our children 40 years later protesting the same things, I have to look at what are those bits that we can continue to build on. I personally have not seen this many people that are not Black specifically, and even more specifically, white Americans, and now white people that are from, you know, Ireland or that are in Australia and in London joining forces. I saw pictures of people in, you know, Indian people in their temples and mosques and places of worship, hanging pictures of George and lighting candles and going to pray on our behalf. I have seen people just step up, and just in my own personal life, when I think about the things that were even born out of my own releasing my rage on social media, I always say when I meditate, even if I put something negative out, something positive will come out of it, right? That's the ability to transform energy, which is a law, right? A law of thermodynamics. It can't be created, it can't be destroyed, but it can be transformed, which I make a mental note to do that, and then transferred, put it out there so people can feel it. Since this has happened, one thing that gives my heart peace is that my inbox, my text, my email, any way people can reach me, people of not Black origin or African descent origin, have been saying, what can I do? I'm going to do better. I have done this, this, and this. Or the people who've done nothing and never saw it or cared to pay attention before, apologizing and saying, you know what? I have had my head in the sand. I'm going to pull it out and become part of this historic time to make a change and be an ally. I'm going to put my peace and my safety and my life on the line to do something for all of us to move forward together, because without aligning, there will always be disruption. We have to align. So I'm seeing more of that. That's what fuels my hope. That's what helps my gratitude. I'm thankful for those people. My social media has been a good platform. Just my Facebook alone, I only have a shy 700 people, right? But out of that 700, over 200 of those people are doctors, and about 150 of those people are white doctors specifically. And I also have people who are scientists, lawyers, nurses, and business owners that are predominantly white, financial advisors. Okay, so I urge them, what have you been doing, and what has come out even subconsciously that you may not have been aware of, that you can be mindful in now, your day-to-day interactions with people, and make sure you are part of this change? And they are starting to get it. And for that alone, I'm thankful, because this is going to be a forward movement. And out of this chaos, I believe will be the birth of a new age where we can all really see real changes in laws and government and society that will impact my people, in particular, Black and Brown, Latino and Indian people in this country who are American and who have a right to equality.
Exactly. Oh my God, that was so beautiful. Like, and you're absolutely right. I feel that energy too. Like you said, there are more white people coming up, or not non-Black in general, like you said, because Asian Americans weren't always there either, right? We weren't always there. And seeing the number of Asian Americans also speaking up has also built me, like given me so much hope too, because I'm like, oh yes, like we're finally, thank you for saying something, because what affects one group of people affects everyone. And I think exactly. And I think the sooner people realize that, the better our world is just going to be, because when one group of people don't get justice or don't have equality, nobody has equality. And that's the reality. Yeah, exactly.
It's unfortunate that sometimes we're so egotistically driven that we don't think about things until we put ourselves in someone else's shoes. Mm-hmm. You should know that it's wrong, whether you can see it happening to you or not. And what I have noticed is, I have a lot of friends who are Asian, or they're either first or second generation Asian Americans. Mm-hmm. But when I look at the number of Asian institutions in this country, businesses in particular, and how Black women are such a huge integral part of the money that they bring in, it would behoove you to protect even the people who you service, who are the reason you get to have a home, a car, your kids in private schools or whatever. And I feel like the majority of my Asian friends have been very just demure. They don't want to start anything. They just want to let it ride. But all of us have power in our voices, all of us. And, just like I said, I was a born healer. I am also a born warrior. And I have gone to bat for other people that I didn't know, that also didn't look like me. I have actually gone to war and helped people who did not look like me, who probably didn't even want me to touch them because I'm Black. Who knows? I've had patients that didn't want me when they walk in and saw that it was a Black doctor. But I tell you what, this young Black female doctor will take a level of care of you that maybe you wouldn't get anywhere else. And that's because I'm driven by compassion. And I do want to make sure that you get everything you need, whether I know you or not, whether we voted for the same person or not, whether we live in the same community and make the same amount of money or not. I don't know what God you pray to, and I personally don't care. I don't know who you sleep with, and I personally don't care. What I do know is somebody is sitting in front of me who needs me for my expertise and my help and what I have to offer you in order for you to meet your health goals, despite whatever, because this person has integrity and took that oath to first do no harm.
Exactly.
You're getting that when you sit in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're a practitioner of any sort, because besides those doctors and lawyers and engineers and whatever, I have friends who are massage therapists and acupuncturists, you know, they are in all levels of healthcare. Mm-hmm. If you know within yourself that you may not be providing as good a care to someone based off some difference they have or something that you're, again, even subconsciously harboring, because we all have a bit of prejudice. We all go through that, whether it's our upbringing or societal norms and exposures that were never okay, but now we're seeing it. It's called being mindful. Be mindful of your shortcomings so that those things won't show up when a patient is sitting there in front of you. These are all the things we need to be working on. Whatever business you have, show up for people. Be present with people. Be mindful of yourself and others. And if we can start there with the basic principles, knowing that they have a right to be respected, that's inherent, not because of who they are or what they earn or what they do or who their connections are, because it is a human being in front of you needing your power. We and doctors have more power than most people. You can withhold information from a patient and do a lot of damage. You didn't introduce anything to cause harm, but you withheld. And what they say, sometimes omission is also lying.
Right. And that's a type of harm done upon the patient.
Type of harm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So we all have a responsibility. I don't care if it's not happening to the Asian community. I don't care if, you know, whatever your belief is, you're not seeing as many Catholic churches burn. You haven't seen as many people walk into a Catholic church and open fire as you have Muslim temples, Jewish synagogues, and Black Southern churches.
Right.
You've never seen it. So we need to protect these groups that have not had the protection.
Exactly. And that goes on I think everything that you said was on the topic of really like empathy, first of all, especially as a doctor, because we see the racial prejudices from in our healthcare system where doctors do have biases against people of color, predominantly Black and Hispanic and indigenous populations. And just like you said, being aware of those, right? I always recommend for so many people doing like the implicit biases test by Harvard. The first time I did that was like my freshman year of college, and it just puts things in perspective, and it helps you understand what subconscious biases you have, right? You may not be or feel overtly racist, but what are subconsciously, what have you been taught or what's been ingrained in your head based on culture, right? Based on our society, based on all the things, like, I mean, there's so much negative media representation for, again, the Black, Hispanic, indigenous communities. And now there is a lot more positive, and I'm grateful for that. But for so long, there was a lot of negativity, and the only positive would be, I mean, you would even see the difference of like how they would talk about, I remember there was like a Stanford boy who raped, a Stanford man who raped a woman, and they were like, oh, he was like a swimmer and he went to Stanford, and like they would talk about all of these, like
all the highlights.
Exactly. Whereas like when there was a Black man who was actually a lawyer, like they talked about him as if he was this terrible person, right?
Or they pull his juvenile criminal record from when he bust a window out at 16.
Yeah.
What 16-year-old? Oh my God. You see, this is the thing. Yeah. I do feel like sometimes we get wrapped up in hero worship, and we can all get it. Because I get a lot of love from people, a ton. But I do let them know, whatever you see right here, number one, is multidimensional. It's, you know, I'm a whole person. And this whole person, back at 16 or 21, is not the woman you see today. But if I need to also pull from those moments to get me through today, I will, you know. And people exist as a whole in a spectrum when you look at their life. And all of those colors make them who they are. All of those things and bits and pieces are woven into the fabric of their being, but it doesn't represent the whole tapestry.
Right. Exactly.
And Black people and very marginalized groups, immigrants especially too, they don't get a chance to have their tapestry viewed. They're being plucked by their fibers. And that is not okay, because they are not just one thing. And it's not fair as a whole. And, you know, when we look at fairness, goodness, and just treating people as you want to be treated, if it doesn't seem like the act was kind or born out of kindness, born out of integrity, born out of identifying yourself in this person as seeing their overall humanism, then it probably wasn't the right course of action. We need to be able to see the whole person, just like we as naturopathic doctors treat the whole person.
Yes.
You can show up with a stomach ache. This is just showing how we view people and how we take cases and how we treat people is very reflective of what's going on in the world. This riot, this quarantine, all of these things are symptoms.
Exactly.
Right? And if you're only going after the symptom, that's like me just treating a stomach ache and not understanding the root cause and helping you to do what? Remove the disturbing factor. How can you heal when you haven't identified the root cause, America? Not doctor or not, America. How can you just chase the symptom, miss the root cause, and then expect healing?
Yeah.
You cannot.
No.
Because a stomach ache, unless it was an isolated event where you just ate something you knew you shouldn't have, still has a whole downpour of cascading events that happened in your body before your stomach even started hurting that you didn't pay attention to. Right? The tongue itching, the something's going on, and the twitching and all these other things that probably came along with it. Right. Now you keep eating it, the stomach keeps hurting. Now here comes the other cascade of events that are now more prominent. That said, okay, since you can ignore the stomach ache or keep taking Tums, now I'm gonna make your hair fall out. Now I'm gonna make your ankles swell. Now I'm gonna make your blood pressure change. Now I'm gonna hike up your cholesterol. And if we're constantly just raining down medications without saying, look, stop. And let's figure out, why are you causing this pain on yourself? Why are you doing this to yourself?
Right.
And how can I help support you to make better choices to allow your body to heal? Because the question now becomes, do you want to heal or do you want to suffer?
Right.
The choice is yours. And this is the same for America. The choice is ours, and globally, the choice is ours. Are we going to continue to suffer, or are we going to heal and move forward together in a way that's conducive to all of our evolution and all of our children thriving? I want to be 96 looking at my great grandchildren doing well, not marching, not rioting, not protesting, or having the need to, because we've all wised up and we take care of the microcosm that is the planet Earth and all of its inhabitants. And that's where we need to be going as a society.
Yes, I love that so much. That was the absolute perfect analogy of root cause medicine and how America, that's what we need to do here. well, all over the world, but definitely where we preside or reside is in the United States. And so that's where we see most of these issues. Also, the United States is probably one of the most diverse nations in the world.
And
And
we're
therefore,
on stage.
I'm sorry?
And we're on the world stage.
Exactly.
Everyone's
Right.
watching us because we're a good depiction of everyone in the world. We have everyone here. So why are we harboring resentment over differences when we can bring those differences together to make us strong? Because it's in genetic diversity that keeps us safe and protected from things like COVID. It's in the healing of the immune system that keeps us safe and protected against whatever the next plague will happen to be.
Mm-hmm.
And there's strength in numbers, there's strength in diversity, there's strength individually in a gene pool that's diverse. And when people start to really apply those scientific logics to day-to-day life, all the answers are there.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yes. Okay, I'm gonna kind of like transition a little bit. I know that you talked a little bit about how you're more hopeful now because so many people who are not Black have reached out to you and asked how they can support and how they can actually become an ally now. So to us allies, what do you recommend that we do right now, and how do we become good? How do we become the best, not just good? How do we become the best allies that we possibly can be?
I do think that those things are, sometimes I feel like they're hard to unpack and answer, but it's steps, right?
Right.
When you look at a person going from here to there, you sometimes just look at where they started and where they finished. But that journey along the way, you missed that struggle of getting there. And I think for us, if we can just look at step by step, because at the whole, it seems overwhelming and that would trigger you to do nothing. But the power is in your choice. And even when you do nothing, you've chosen to do nothing. So maybe if you can empower yourself and say, okay, today I'm going to wake up and I'm going to choose to be better myself. I'm going to get through this day by doing A, B, C, D, E, F, G, whatever those things are. You know, you take that step by step. This will also have to be step by step. I think one good place to start is yourself. What are some things that you know you struggle with? And how have you managed to be mindful of that and make those changes? Now, share that with other people that look like you who are also dealing with that same battle. That's another step. That will be difficult because they're not going to want to probably change or hear you out or anything like that. So another step is listening. Listen to the people who have the argument and listen to the people who are proposing the argument. You know, are you going to listen to a Black woman when they tell you their experience? Are you going to really listen and remove your own ego? They're not attacking you.
Right.
They're talking about something you represent, right? And listen to that Indian man. Listen to that immigrant. Listen to children. Children have the answers for almost everything. Sometimes they're cute, but sometimes they're just very profound. My daughter scares, and I mean the shit out of me sometimes with the things that she says. And I'm, whose kid is this? Oh, mine. I get it. But, you know, we have those moments. Listen to your children and see what else can you do locally that will have an effect nationwide. Okay, I do encourage white people to do something that I haven't heard mentioned in any of these platforms, is educate yourself and your kids on the history of others in this country. And now, since we're talking about, you know, we have been alerted by the killing of a Black man, start there, because we've been here a long time. Some of us came over. They don't talk about that, because the majority of who are over here were kidnapped, enslaved, and brought over here. And then some of the most atrocious crimes known in history happened to my people who had to survive that 400 years, survive Jim Crow, which was my mother's time, not my great, 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 great grandmother, my mother. And then me, who has been protesting since I was young. And now my daughter, who's 10, who's already been in 4 protests, more than some people their whole life, you know? So I feel we need to start educating our kids, and then take it a step further and go to the board of your schools and say, why is it we only learn about Black people and their contributions during Black History Month, which is only 28 days, and we minimize to may as well be 3, because I only hear about Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, and maybe Harriet, or maybe Sojourner, maybe Frederick, maybe Jackie Robinson, and they start jumping into athletes and what they did. And it's just, Black history is American history. It shouldn't be limited to just Black History Month. That's a good time to shine a highlight. When you have those Asian Heritage Months, celebrate that. The Latino Heritage Month, celebrate that. Indian American, because my daughter and I, we go to Diwali Fest, and we talk to people and we laugh, and we're out there, Punjab Nation too. We're rocking out hard. Yeah. So go celebrate other cultures and learn about them and talk to the people. Okay, now you hear their concerns. See, you have a duty to act. Most people don't know what to do. And just the thought of having to do something is overwhelming. Just unpack it little by little. Demand your education systems are better books, because we were more than slaves. Stop highlighting slavery so much and highlight those cardiologists that were Black, inventors that were Black that had their patents stolen, who invented the traffic light, who really did invent peanut butter, who invented the phones, even these things, these genres of music. Like, unpack it and look at who they were and what they did as individuals. And, one of my favorite artists, Nina Simone, she wrote a song, Strange Fruit, and she also wrote the song Mississippi Goddamn. She also wrote the song For Women. And I watched maybe a week ago as Angelique Kidjo and Elizabeth Wright, and there were 2 other jazz artists that redid that song. And then there was also a rap version done by Talib Kweli, one of my favorite hip hop artists of all time, that redid For Women in a hip hop version. The stories that Nina told when she got on that microphone, so openly, so transparently, so forcefully, in only the way a Black woman could do. I mean, we are crucified and damned a lot, but the things that we've brought forward for this country alone is so phenomenal and so astronomical that it even bewilders me that sometimes we're considered at the bottom of the totem pole, which we are the whole core of that totem. Mm-hmm. You built around us. So let's be clear on that part. So then I think about these women who were strong enough, who had what we call true grit to tell their stories, to fight back in their music and in their personal life. Let's start looking at them and unpacking these lyrics. Why would you sing something called Strange Fruit? Why would you have to sing that? Mm-hmm. And why are we still singing it today? George and that cop kneeling his neck was a very piece of strange fruit. And if it was strange to me, I'm sure it was strange to a lot of people. Right. How do we repair that? And that's what we're starting to see. Look at that. Ask yourself, what can I do? What can I do? And then go ahead and talk to Black women. Sometimes I get people are a little bit scared to approach us because of, again, stereotypes. Stop watching TV versions of Black women and what we represent, which is not who we are, is not even a fraction of who we are. Start talking to those Black female lawyers, directors of boardrooms, even the ones who you see commuting on the bus. What is it that you feel like you need to get better? And get on and talk to people. And that'll help you understand what you can do more. Education is going to be the biggest part of it. And now action, petition, voting, putting the right people in positions of power, maybe getting some of these old people with their ideas out. Because you can almost believe 65 and older was participating in Jim Crow. Not all of them were fighting against it. Yeah. They were holding a water hose. They were pitching the dogs. And this is why when Black men go before them in these court cases, they can't be heard no matter what they say, and no matter what the evidence says, no matter what the witnesses say. because this judge does not see a person.
Exactly.
And did not see a person.
Mm-hmm.
So when you start, first see a person, all the answers are coming to you because your higher self knows.
Right.
It knows. So those are just a few things. And protest, support.
Right.
Next time you see somebody standing on a Black man's neck, get between them, because there is no change without pain or bloodshed. Okay? A lot of our people shed blood just so I could live in a pretty much all white community and service. All my patients are almost white except for like 6. Okay? It's not because I want it that way. It's definitely not for that reason. So then I have to reach out and see how I can help people who can't afford to pay the money that it costs to see me because I don't take insurance. How can we fix those things? And that's what I work towards. So just ask yourself individually, how can you use your platform and your power and your prestige and your connections to make it easy for someone else to connect the dots?
Yes, and I love that. I was actually planning on asking you about how important it is to learn about history, Black history, throughout our education systems, not just during Black History Month in general. And so I appreciate that you already talked about all that, and it really is so important to educate yourself too. So it's not even just about changing the system; it's changing your education, learning more, finding more inspirational Black people, other than those like few that we learned about in school, right? There are so many. And Nina Simone, I absolutely love her. And I'm so glad that you brought her up too, because she actually, the theme song of my podcast is like a remix of her song as well. I was very, I was very particular about whenever I was making the song. It's the Feelin' Good song that Michael Bublé also redid. And I was very particular. I was like, no, it has to be Nina Simone's version that we can remix and make it a little bit different, but like it has to be her voice. And because I'm very passionate about like how amazing of a woman she is, or she was.
Dynamic.
I'm sorry.
And she was very dynamic.
Yes.
And I think that's something that we've seen as Black people, we're also tired of. Our celebrated heroes will get picked apart and demeaned. Whereas the white history we learn, those people are celebrated no matter what. But when you look at each of these select white heroes in America, they all owned slaves.
Right.
And we can't that. There are no good slave owners. Let's be clear. None. Okay. And they all sat down and radicalized the behavior. They ignited the behavior, because just because you have a slave doesn't mean you treat them any kind of way, right? I've had people work for me. I show them respect. You know, I feel like I've paid enough for housekeeping services, but I will still tip, you know, and I don't have to put you down because you work for me, or I don't see your position as something great. You're in a position to help me be at my best, to keep an area sanitized. You know, those things are all important. People talk about garbage men. Those businesses are all important, you know, and they need their respect. They have their unions. And when I think about these people they look at low levels, does that mean it's okay to treat them that way because you view them as that? Right. That's your ego. That's your ego. And when we look at, if you can look at what that person contributes and their potential to contribute to the whole of society, maybe it wouldn't allow you to treat them that way. And see, we have to look at that when we're talking about the folks we celebrate in white history and the amount of degrading treatment that they gave anyone who did not reach their level of what they thought was deserving of respect. This included other poor white people, what you would call trailer trash, right? You're allowed to treat them any kind of way. But even the trailer trash was allowed, trailer trash, and even back then just Euro trash, they'd say, was allowed to have slaves and now take out all of their pain and frustration, aggression onto the slave from higher order white people who treated them bad and suppressed them. And that's what I think we're seeing with the cops, you know?
Yeah, it's an abuse
They're
of
not
power.
getting that treatment. And now it's abuse of power because you've been bullied and you never have respect. And now you're going to put that on somebody else. As they say, hurt people hurt people. We've all experienced pain and hurt. How do we not project that onto others? And that's another thing you can do. Unpack your own hurt, your own traumas, clear that up, get right with yourself in the universe, and then put that best version of yourself out there so that we can start looking at, it'll be easier to celebrate your white heroes and your black ones and your Indians and everybody, because you'll see them all on the same playing field. And that's what we need to start. We need to start there.
Yeah, definitely. And I like that when you were talking about how no matter what for white history or white American history, whenever we consider that, or white history in general, there are so many heroes that we, or our cultures, or were learned as heroes when they've done so many negative things, like have slaves, right? Like George Washington, and John Adams and Thomas Jefferson and all of our founding fathers, right? And then the only people of color that we really learn about are Martin Luther King Jr. and like Gandhi, right? And those two were the most peaceful throughout history. And so then it kind of portrays this idea of like, oh, people of color must be peaceful in order to be an actual hero, versus where white Americans have, it doesn't matter, because how did we get freedom from Britain? Violence and war. What happened when there was foreign terrorism in our country during 9/11? We went to war. There was no peace, right? We didn't go through that route. And ideally, yes, that would be the route we would take, right? If
you were heard.
If we were hurt. Yeah. But we've deemed it acceptable for white people essentially to practice violence when they're hurt, but not acceptable for people of color.
Or anytime they feel like it, you know?
Exactly.
During sports, you know, during the pandemic when you should have been at home, you know, regardless of how you feel, you really disobeyed what they were telling you to do. And I don't think you know more than they do when it comes to this pandemic, even though what I think overall is known must be very little, or we would have been over this hump. So, but to be able to protest with guns and have everyone go home and go to bed safely at night, to see cars burning because your soccer team lost and looting happening is one thing. But a man dying, no matter what was destroyed, you can replace, these are material possessions. The body is material. When it's expired, there is no coming back. And we need to come back from this, making sure that we know as a whole that life is more important than the material. And if pharmaceutical companies knew this, if doctors know this, if lawyers know this, you know, judges thought this, then all of our systems, our main structural systems would be better. If business owners thought this, you walk in for a job. I have a cousin, he's my attorney actually, Dedrick Thaxton, shout out to you for keeping my contract straight. But when, you know, I remember him telling me that he went for a job once and then he left something in the room, and when he turned around to get it, he saw that the man had already balled up his resume and threw it in the trash. And I thought, certainly not my highly educated, well-groomed, well-spoken cousin. Just because he's what, a black man? Oh, well, thank you for balling up. You did him a favor, because he doesn't need you working for him, tarnishing his reputation and trying to pretend he's incompetent. We're not doing that anymore. And, you know, I think of my own experience. So, and I don't mind sharing with anyone my age, but I'm in my 40s, let's be clear. But when I was in my 20s, I was the youngest, lowest ranking female Black human being that sat on the occupational wellness board. And I love my job and I did it thoroughly. all of my patients were taken care of. Everyone that was under my care got what they need. And I don't think people really knew how tough that was to be sitting at a table with predominantly white men. So there was only me and one other woman, and she was white. And there was only me representing Black people. Well, not representing Black people, but just, as a whole, right? And one
that's
other
a
Black
whole nother, that's
man.
a whole nother issue, right?
Right. You make one mistake, oh, all Black women are bad,
Right.
But it was one of those things where I thought, wow, I definitely don't think anybody else in that table was in their 20s but me. It was hard to be heard. And then when I spoke up, I remember being pulled to the side and talked to once about how I embarrassed somebody who was clearly above my level, and they were expecting an apology. Now, this is the thing. I'll always apologize when I'm wrong. I don't apologize when I'm right. And I certainly don't apologize for your feelings being hurt. Those are your feelings, which I'm not responsible for. You unpack that trauma. I said to that man, if that person was doing his job, I wouldn't have had to report his numbers. If he was doing what he was supposed to do, you wouldn't have had that conversation even come from me. I don't sugarcoat, and these lips are only made for kissing and loving and speaking, not kissing ass. And that's when they knew right then that, you're going to come correct with me and you're going to respect my opinion and what I have to add to this board and this panel. Because had it come out the mouth of a man in particular, a white man, it would have been much more received, or they could have just, whatever they would have done with it. And so I just think back about all of those times when I had to be the voice of reason and have it be just sometimes completely disregarded, to where we have to now circle back around to it. And so, it's tough. Yeah. It's tough being a minority, especially a woman. You're a double minority, and it's, how do you get your voice heard? So now you have to have someone step in for you that's sitting on the board with you or sharing an office with you, say, no, that person's correct. And I feel like I haven't seen that in my whole 20 years of working in mostly Caucasian dominated fields or white American dominated fields, whatever you want to refer, whatever title. And that's the thing that hurts. I'm like, I've cooked food for you. You've slept at my house, our kids have played together. But when I needed you, and anyone who's met me for 5 minutes, no, I'm never, oh, we're going to talk about this today until it gets right. So where is that boldness in you?
Right.
And that's what we're looking for.
And that's exactly it. And that's a big part of being an ally, right? Just standing up and speaking up when someone's not listening to someone, even if it is subconsciously because of the color of their skin, doesn't matter. Stand up for them. And I think that is exactly what we need. And I've also been telling a lot of my white friends or non-Black friends in general, I'm like, if someone is posting something that seems racist or inappropriate in whatever way, don't delete them, educate them, right? Don't delete them. People within the Black community, I'm totally okay with you deleting those people, because I don't think that's necessary for you to deal with that trauma and that shit. But for those of us who are trying to be allies, it's our responsibility then to educate and inform. And so, and ideally, it's not going to happen overnight. They're not going to just all of a sudden change their minds overnight. But like you said, it takes time. And I've seen it myself, is like having that privilege of that, what I call my brown privilege, because I can relate to white people in a different way, and then I can relate to Black people in a different way. And so I really am that in between. I'm literally that brown, right? And so being able to, like, I've had so many white people tell me, they're like, oh, I'm afraid, I don't know what I can ask or what I can say, and I'm like, as long as you say something, and then I will help them be like, okay, like this is how it should be presented. And then what I usually try to do is direct them to a woman, usually a woman, just because, I feel I'm just much more inspired by Black women in general, but I will refer to either a Black woman or man and be like, listen to what they're saying, right? Like they're already talking about it. And people do get what I call representation fatigue. People are exhausted answering your questions of what is going on and how can I help and what can I do. Like there are resources now. You can even Google it. I've told multiple people recently to just Google systemic racism. I'm like, Google what is systemic racism? You'll start to understand, right? Like that's all you have to do. So doing the education for yourself and then putting yourself in uncomfortable situations for yourself. For example, I mean, I know you know this, but it's even within the Indian community too. So if I'm with a group of other Indian people, white people are less likely to approach us, right? Because they're like, oh, that's an Indian thing, right? That's an Indian thing. And that's the same thing where if there's a group of Black people together, people are like, oh, that's a Black thing. And that's not necessarily the case. Like, why do we have to be the minority in every situation, right? So go talk to those people, be like, yeah, what's going on? Like, and that's it. There's nothing, like, you don't have to ask them about their whole life history. Just be like, hey, what's up? You know, very basic things.
So it's a two-part thing. And, you know, I've had to be the mediator when I put together a town hall discussion. And I don't even remember, this is crazy. I don't even remember who died at that point because there's so many deaths of Black people since then that I don't even remember who it was. I would have to look at the year and Google it and see what was happening at that time. That's a shame in and of itself. But someone had recently died at the enVoque. Then I put together a town, a little meeting, and I don't even want to say town, but it was within our doctor community, right?
Okay.
And it was some white people came. When I mean some, very little, and it was predominantly Black. And then we had one Asian Hispanic person, all in one. I love her, Dr. Christina Yap. Shout out.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and then we had I think one person of Indian background represented. And I said, what I noticed is whenever the white women would talk, it was never anything right that they could say. Because I'm not gonna lie, the Black women who, look, rightfully so, we're tired. We're tired and we're fed up. And it probably was more of a venting, healing space than a what can we do type of space in the first place. How is this impacting you and what do you want to see come out of it? Maybe it would have been better. How is this impacting you from the white representation standpoint? And what would you personally do and what would you like to see happen after this? And it became this, and then the white person wants to shut down. Now, this could be why they don't speak up because, like I had to tell the Black person there that was giving a lot of the grief, I said, hey, look, you're acting out on them. So one, do you want them to be an ally or not? Ask yourself that. So once they show up and tell you they're an ally, will antagonizing someone who's already told you on your side, i.e. preaching to the choir, is that gonna help? Probably not. And suppose they now back away because that turned them off. Because discomfort, let's be honest, no one wants to sit in discomfort. No one wants to be there. Even in your own personal journey and growth, you just want to hop to the next level as well. You don't want all the mediocre steps in between. Get me there and stop playing. It's uncomfortable. So what I encourage white people to do is, hey, suck it up. You're going to have to be uncomfortable. There is nothing more uncomfortable, yet deeply satisfying as having Black skin. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I tell people, I'm proud to be a Black woman. If I died and came back 13 times, I believe in cycling energy. If I come back 13 more times, if it takes that many times for me to come back as a Black woman over and over again until we get this thing right, I'm willing to sacrifice my peace in the afterlife to keep coming back until you humans get this down. Okay? That's uncomfortable. That is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But I feel profoundly blessed to be a Black woman, especially the Black woman that I am in particular. It's going to be uncomfortable for you, white person. It is going to be. And that's too bad. I'm sorry. Suck it up and take it on the chin like we've done for so long and keep moving forward. And when that Black person sees that, they're seeing you at every event. They're seeing your name on every petition. They're hearing your voice and they're seeing you back up what you said you're going to do, even on your social media platform and your everyday walk in life. That's how you earn respect. You don't get that out the gate. So come in knowing you're not going to get that out the gate because you embody the thing that we're fighting. Black women and men. When someone aligns with you, let them align. Align is such a beautiful word. It's almost like this gelling to form one linear aspect. You can't have that smooth line with a kink in the chain. Don't you be that kink. Mm-hmm. So what they called you Black, so what they called you African American, they don't know what to call you, Asiatic, Black original, Nubian, ancient Kemetic, whatever you refer to yourself as. When we look at you, we see a Black American. Don't make it hard on them to try to align with your principle of getting things done and moving the culture, the human culture, forward. Okay? The Black culture, yes, the human culture altogether. Mm-hmm. And people get so mad about the Black Lives Matter. And yes, all lives matter, but all lives aren't mattering, which is why we have to specify the Black. And I tell people, if you want to try to gaslight me, go ahead. It won't be wise, but go ahead. We need to do something better. Like stop fighting over terms and stop fighting over words and look at the intent behind it. Is the person intending to align with you? Let them, Black people, right? It's time to stop the silliness and fighting with people who are trying to become an ally. Yeah. We have to stop that part.
Mm-hmm. I would say that's kind of towards all the races too, because I feel that sometimes too. Like you said, we're just tired of being the one person who represents our entire race. And so, yeah, I think that's a good message for all the non-Black people as well. But yeah, and then a really good message for white people too, that you will have to be uncomfortable, but the privilege that all non-Black people in general that we have is that we can choose when to be uncomfortable, right? Versus where some people, predominantly Black, right now what we're mostly talking about is the Black community, don't have that choice. Yeah, like it's not a choice of when you feel uncomfortable, right? So that's why that's really important. But
one thing you cannot do, I do want to point this out though. Okay. The best thing you can do as a white person, because what's really harmful and hurtful to us that I feel white people do a lot is try to either discredit us or not support our belief. i.e., I go into the store and I'm mistreated by a white man and I think it's because of racism. And then you say, maybe he's just a jerk. Maybe he's having a hard day. Maybe he treats everybody that way. Did you say something? That part needs to stop. And again, I've endured racism for 42 years. I know what it looks like. I was born in Memphis, Tennessee. I don't know if I specified that. Yeah. But that's the home of, we're known for three things: barbecue, Elvis Presley, Dr. Martin Luther King's assassination. Not his life as a whole, his principles, the death of one of our biggest heroes. Okay? We still say the white side, the Black side. Oh, there's a Whole Foods. Yeah, it's in the white part of White Station. The streets are named White Station and White Haven. They just named one of the streets the auction block where they sold our bodies. They just renamed that street not too long ago. There were still slave quarters that are still down there that you can go see. So my antenna for racism is pretty high. Now, could it not be racism and you could just be a jerk? Yes, but I don't need my white friend pointing that out. Right. You shut up and you listen to what I'm saying. One mouth, two ears. Listen twice as hard. Sympathize. You may not have the ability to empathize with me fully, but you could still show me empathy. You could still say, hey, that guy he did seem a little bit racist or something. Try to agree with us sometime to get us to let down our guard and armor. That's why it's hard to let down, because you keep invalidating our experience.
Mhm.
Stop invalidating us and
Right.
start hearing us.
Definitely. I love it. Okay. So we're kind of running out of time now. So I'm going to get into the rapid fire questions and then, yeah, yeah, I know. Like there was so much that we just unpacked and I'm so grateful for that. And any resources or anything that you have that you'd like to share, we'll put it in the show notes. Okay.
Mhm.
All right, let's get into the rapid fire question. So we talked about Mahan Health and how Mahan means great. And so what does Mahan Health mean to you?
Great healthcare is, to me, really quickly, just listening to the person and exhausting all possibilities until they meet their health goals and beyond. Helping someone achieve not great health, optimal health. That looks completely different.
Right.
And I think that's all of our jobs to do that. And we can easily do that when we take the time we need to help people meet their goals, essentially.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, so the next two questions, they could be related. They don't have to be. It's kind of up to you and what's been going on in your life. But what was the most difficult health change for you to make personally? And what is something that you're still working on?
Okay. Initially, it was, well, I'm pescatarian and I have had that diet now for 20 years or so. And I remember getting food poison once really bad when I was 17. And I said, okay, I'm done with the eating of the pork. Meat just did not align with my body. Back then, we didn't know anything about eating for your blood type. I am A positive. And giving up meat, I felt was a tough one initially. And, I don't mind throwing in a little funny racist joke there, but I was like, oh, how am I going to separate from this fried chicken? Because again, I'm Southern and we can cook some food. So that was a tough one, but I haven't eaten chicken since the year 2000. I think I tried it in 2001 and got really sick and was like, okay, I'm really done. And then I
What are you
struggle
still
with
working on?
now. What am I still working on? I really struggle with, for a while I did like gluten, dairy, egg, and soy free. For the first 3 weeks, I felt like an axe murderer. Like you just couldn't talk to me, touch me, or be in my space. Because I was hungry and I felt crazy. And I'm sure it was a detox reaction as well. And I hated it. But 3 months later, when I look back at even those pictures, I was like, oh my God, I was super healthy. Why did I go back to eating it, I don't have celiac disease and I haven't expressed like a full-on allergy, but I can tell when I have the culmination of those things in my body, it does not work for my body. And here I am now trying to reverse that again, because just like anyone else, I have my own health issues that I work through. And I know if I remove those things and ate cleaner, that I would be better. And if I slept more, I would be better.
Oh yeah, that usually will do it. All
Yeah.
right, well, thank you for sharing. The last question I have is, if you could have a commercial, like a PSA announcement that would be blasted to the whole world, what would it be about and why?
I think it would just show, I've thought about this, actually having a camera in the room when I take an initial case. That would be all people need to see, just edited clips of that strung together, because you'll see someone who is caring and compassionate and listening, and you're not getting a 15-minute appointment. You're getting a full 1 hour appointment. And as many follow-ups as you need to actually feel better. And I want people to know that they're coming to someone who cares about them, their families, and their story. And your story is indeed safe with me. And I'm going to honor you as a whole person and treat you as a whole person, not pick you apart just to the symptoms. And know that I do care about your mental well-being. I care about those things that got you to who you are right now. You're going to be respected, cared for. And I feel like that commercial would be all you need to see, because you'll be seeing in real time what it looks like to be cared for. And, because I also have to couple that with when people ask me, and I've gotten asked this question a lot for some reason, it's odd, but what do I love most about myself? I really love my heart. It's fueled with so much passion, but no matter how many times it's been hurt or broken or whatever I witness happening in the world, it still just bleeds for people. Could be me being a woman, could be a mother, could be me being a Virgo, all of these different things. But I genuinely love and care about human beings and people. And that's what I think people feel, and why my patients ride so hard for me, is that they know that that heart is being expressed to them every time they walk through that door.
Mm-hmm. And I know I feel that too every time. I miss our hugs so much. You're definitely one of the best huggers in the game. Yeah, definitely. But yeah, well, thank you so much for sharing all of that. So my last question is, where can people find you?
Okay, so again, I'm in Scottsdale. I do have a license in both Scottsdale and, Arizona as a whole, and California. My Dr. Shine says at gmail.com is where I take some personal people, private clients through telemedicine. I want to say telepathically. That's amazing. Put that out there.
That would be cool.
I'm drawing them in telepathically, but I'm taking them in via telemedicine. But my brick and mortar is enVoque, MD, ENVOQUE, MD. Okay. And there's one in Scottsdale and one in Mesa. I'm the medical director for both of those offices. And it's a place that mostly focuses on thyroid and hormones, but that doesn't mean we can't help you in other areas. For people who I take privately, that's actually been happening nationwide. Sometimes they just want a second opinion or a consult, or they'll fly out here and come see me initially and then continue their care, just like we are through Facebook, Zoom, FaceTime and things like that. So yeah. I'm available anyway. And it's Dr. Shine says straight through, no periods, DRSHINESAYS at Gmail.
Yeah, I will have all that information in the show notes, so people can just find that there. But awesome. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much for talking about this absolutely needed topic. Nice. Not even, I hate to say especially during this time, because I think it's needed to talk. I think we need to talk about it all the time.
Regularly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely. Part of the conversation, as they say, and now it won't be so uncomfortable to hear. And we can start thinking about ways to make these changes and solidify the change. That's the other part.
Exactly. The policy changes, making the systemic changes, not just protesting, but like what actually is changing.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right.
Thank you, Dr. Patel, for having me. And it's been such an honor. I'm so proud to call you a colleague. And I know your patients are being thoroughly served as well. They are lucky to have you as their doctor, because you are indeed very phenomenal.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I love you. All right. Well, thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
I hope you all enjoyed that episode and now have a better idea of some things that you can start to do to get involved in the fight for justice and equality. As naturopathic physicians, Dr. Shine and I are always looking for the root cause, and the root cause of the current issues at hand are systemic racism, and we must call it out for what it is so that we can finally reverse it and cure our nation of that disease. I'll have Dr. Shine's information and the resources we mentioned in the show notes below, but that is all I have for you all today. Wishing you all Mahan health and peace and love, and I will see you next time.